Welcome to the show that brings the living experiences of black men in the UK in a dialogue of equals with health professionals from the NHS and community advocates to reduce health inequalities affecting our communities.
Me and my unks had a dialogue of equals. We're tired of all our people dying before they seem to. Silence don't make you peaceful. So many open wounds, don't even know how we'll heal all. But this is food for thought of a meal. It might be a free course.
Great to have you here, Tony, and amazing that you can give us this time when we know you're actually having a break in Jamaica. But the truth is, you're really not having a break, right?
Exactly. I was going to correct you straight away and say, this isn't a break. I'm working harder than if I was back in England, but it's a nice feeling.
This is the man. This is
Yeah.
the man who's talking amidst sunshine. I bet you got some fruits ripe in your garden as well.
No, I'm afraid, Michael, it says Michael, isn't it?
Yes.
Right. Because of Hurricane Beryl, I'm a fruit person. With somebody with type 2 diabetes, I have my fruits of a morning time.
Okay.
There are hardly any fruit. I got here the 18th of October. This interview is taking place on the 7th of November. There's hardly any fruits on the island. I can't believe it. My wife rings me every day and says, have you had your share of fruits? I said, no, because we go on the road and we stop at all these places where you can buy fruits and so on. And they have some fluxy ripe banana and some fluxy oranges and tangerine. And they're not fit for purpose. And I think, oh my God. And they're blaming it on Beryl. They're also blaming it on some disease that has happened. Because I remember when I was growing up in Jamaica, we would have those lovely tangerines that you'd get on the road to Manchester and St. Elizabeth. And you'd buy the tangerines and the oranges and the Ortiniques. And none of them are there anymore. They said disease has wiped them off. So even melons. I got a melon and I chopped the melon and it is as white as ever.
I guess this is different forms of evolution on the islands. But first of all, before we get into anything, Tony, let me just quickly introduce you to our audience.
Okay.
Right? Tony Kelly. I had the joy of meeting Tony a couple of years ago when we was working on open wounds. Tony is a patient expert by experience with 3 West Midland universities. He's a patient and public involvement representative. Amazingly, this man, Tony, averages 140 diabetes community engagement events in a year.
Wow.
Okay. I'm not going to steal Tony's thunder. Tony's going to explain to us that he's actually afflicted with diabetes type 2, but good man, doesn't want to take the medication, has empowered himself to be able not only to look after his own body, but he carries the message about how to look after yourself, not just locally in Birmingham, where he actually lives, but internationally across the Caribbean as well. Is that right, Tony?
That is correct, Stafford, and I like your words, empower, because I'm on a mission to enable and empower us as Black people to make the behavioral and lifestyle changes. More about that later. So you've used the correct word, empowered.
Absolutely. And I know few people who are more empowered than Tony. I mean, Tony really takes his role as a diabetes champion, a diabetes ambassador. He takes it to the nth degree. Most years, Tony attends and delivers sessions at 140 community engagement events. And in 2019, he somehow managed to carry out a staggering 195 events. I know of nobody else who is as dedicated to the cause as you, Tony. So welcome to our program.
Welcome.
Thank you.
We really are chuffed to have you here. And really, in a sense, we just want to give you a platform to talk to people.
Okay, thanks. And intersperse it with questions as I go along.
Absolutely.
But if I start at the beginning, that's the best place to start, as a Mary Poppins song from Sound of Music. Let's start at the very beginning. Michael and Stafford. I was born in St. Helier Hospital in Carshalton in Surrey. The accent doesn't sound British though. The accent sounds, but I'll come on to that. But my parents at an early age decided, you know what? We're sending this little young boy back to the land of their birth. So they're both Jamaicans. And I then left England at an early age and went to live in a little district called Whitehall in the parish of St. Thomas, where I grew up with my grandaunt, granduncle. My grandaunt was a teacher, and my grandmother. And as a child growing up in Whitehall, St. Thomas here, I saw relatives of mine and other people in the neighborhood. This is the 60s and 70s we're talking about. And I'll start from the top. Some had strokes. Some of them were completely blind. Some had heart attacks. Some had kidney failure. And back then in the 60s and 70s, there was no dialysis machine at the Princess Margaret Hospital in St. Thomas. So they would have to journey to Kingston to go onto the dialysis machine because the kidney and renal problems, and they'd have to be having treatment for that. Some also had, even my aunt, she had 3 of her toes chopped off, chopping off of toes and feet, lower limb amputations. And some of my relatives, Michael and Stafford, died prematurely. In the Caribbean, we would say, gone too soon. So they died in their 40s, 50s. As a very nosy, in a Jamaica, would I say nosy or fast or inquisitive child, I would ask these relatives of mine, what is the matter with them? All they would tell me is they have a touch of sugar. And never just a sugar, a touch of sugar. So they minimized or trivialized or downplayed this very, very serious medical condition by referring to it as a touch of sugar. Now, I want the viewers and listeners to understand diabetes is more than a touch of sugar. It is a very, very serious medical condition. And over the years, we are into 2024, going into 2025 soon, it has become more serious. It is increasing in alarming proportions all over the world. Now, so far, you've heard me mention it as a medical condition. When you look at most of the textbooks and when you go on the internet and when you speak to the doctors and the healthcare professionals, and I must say straight off that I'm not a healthcare professional, as you rightly said, Stafford, I am a patient expert. The textbooks on the whole refer to it as diabetes as an autoimmune disease, a chronic disease, an acute disease, or a non-communicable disease. So just before I came back to England in 1979, I went to Michael Teachers Training College. So I used to teach in the high schools in Kingston. Fast forward, I came back 1979, going about my merry life, and my wife noticed the 4 key symptoms that I might have this medical condition. Remember, I'm calling it a medical condition. Some people might refer to it as a disease. It's the same thing. The 4 key symptoms are T for tired, T for toilet, T for thirsty, and T for thinner. Tired, toilet, thirsty, thinner.
Give me one
I
second.
was displaying those.
Give me 1 second, because that was brilliant, Tony, and that's why you're here, for that way of breaking it down. So did you know that we could identify that we may be suffering from this condition by the 40s?
I didn't, because one of the key things about us and us as a community, we tend not, first of all, to talk about things in the round and openly, but more importantly, be misinformed. And it's interesting that Tony was saying, that's why I've already got an affinity with Tony, because he's from St. Thomas. My dad was from St. Thomas, Mount Lebanus. And interestingly enough, my grandma, she had her leg amputated because of diabetes, and I never heard her complain or talk about the symptoms. Now, it's interesting that we're talking about the symptoms because people tend to suffer in silence. So when you said that, but do I know? I don't think I have ever heard anybody talk about it in terms of those symptoms ever.
Thank you, Tony. Take it away. This is why you're the ambassador, sir.
Okay, so apart from those 4 T's, tired, toilet, thirsty, thinner, there are 2 other classic symptoms, which is slow healing of cuts and wounds, which is why Michael's grandmother ended up having her leg amputated, because of ulcers and sores, slow heal, because there's too much blood glucose or blood sugar in the system and the wounds don't heal properly.
Just breaking that down just slightly, because I'm so glad that you're explaining that. Because from a selfish point of view, I always wondered why it got so extreme, why she had to have her leg amputated. So it's nothing about what's going on internally, it's to do with what happens externally and not being able to repair itself, as in her leg. That's why what it becomes overly infected. Just break that down for me ever so slightly.
No, it is internal. It's not external. She has too much blood glucose or blood sugar in her body, and it is not enabling whatever sores or cuts that she has developed to heal properly. If you're non-diabetic, your sores, the skin takes care of itself, and physician heal thyself, the wounds will be okay. But if you have too much, if you type 2 diabetes or type 1, and there's too much blood glucose or blood sugar because you're not maintaining and controlling it, the wounds take longer to heal. And I'll tell you, there was an issue in the States recently, and I urge viewers to look up it if they don't believe me. Somebody noticed that in the States, a lot of Black people were having their lower limbs amputated and fitted with prosthetic limbs. Please go and look it up. And they suddenly realized the racism that was happening there, where the white people would get the necessary treatment for the sore or the ulcer. First protocol, Black person going to hospital, leg chop off. That should be a last resort. And the message needs to get clear across to whoever watches this. If you have a wound which is not healing because of the blood glucose, blood sugar in the system, do not then go to the hospital or the doctor or wherever, and next thing that minute they say to you, oh, by the way, we're going to have to chop off your toes or your feet or so on. It should be a last resort. This is part of the racism and the inequalities. Your thing is a dialogue of equalities. This is part of the issue which people, Black people in particular, need to be aware of. Cutting off of limbs, toes, and legs is a last resort. They're supposed to treat the wound with whatever medication and so on and try and get it better. And that's something we need to get out there to our own Black people. So what was happening in America at the time, and they did a study and said, no, something's not right. Why are so many Black people walking around with prosthetic limbs? When they did the research, in terms of where they are in the demographics and the population, they were having multiple cutting off of limbs as opposed to white people.
Absolutely. I was in Baltimore recently and I absolutely recognize what you're saying. As a matter of fact, I saw so many people wheelchair bound and on crutches with missing limbs. And I thought, because many of them happen to be drug users, and I thought maybe it was directly down to that. But now you say this, Tony, that makes absolute sense. And it could also be that people are failing to access healthcare early enough. Now, the difference between us in the UK and our brothers and sisters in the USA is that we have free healthcare. So no reason really why people shouldn't be accessing it early. So that's why I think telling people about what the symptoms are so that we identify them quickly and early really is helpful.
I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist here, but it does sound as though there is an element of the fact that we don't talk about this, the fact that it's not well known, that this could be a perpetual or a cyclical event. If we're not talking, we're not transferring the information. If we're not transferring the information, that which should be seen, as Tony rightly said, as a last resort is accepted as the first resort because the doctor told me, the doctor offered this as a solution. We can spare your life if we take your limb. We need to talk more. We need to transfer information more. And Tony is right. That should be seen as a last resort.
And the doctors are not always God. And that's what we're going to learn from Tony, because at some point, Tony is going to talk about his own diagnosis and the way he then decides to deal with it.
I just mentioned there, you said something which is poignant and very of paramount importance. Doctors are not always gods. We tend to put doctors up on a pedestal and treat them like demigods. Some doctors have our interests at heart, But I'm afraid some other doctors, and I don't mind saying this, and people sometimes say, why do you have to say that? There's something called big pharma, big pharma, big pharma, the pharmaceutical industry. Drugs, some people have to be on drugs, don't get me wrong. But sometimes drugs mask the underlying health problems. And we need to be careful when we don't get tongue-tied when we go in and see the doctor, and the doctor says, I'm going to give you this prescription and this one and this one, and we walk out like a medicine chest thinking we've done the right thing.
Well, Tony,
My grandmother would say, open your mouth and talk.
Exactly.
Tony Kelly has to stop talking.
Tony, there's no money in prevention, and we all know that there is the saying, prevention is better than cure. There is money in cure, because that's an ongoing, that's a cyclical event that you have to take week in, week out. Of course, they're not going to be selling prevention. They're going to be selling the cure.
And often,
if you're
often what they're selling, sorry, Tony, often what they're selling is ways to actually manage risk. They're also nowadays managing risk more than anything else. So I was told previously that I was at risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Risk management is a big thing nowadays. Do you
Tell
think?
the truth, though, as soon as you heard that from the professional, from the demigod, as it were, you took it, you ran with it, and you internalized that as the gospel truth that you must run towards, right?
Well, I don't want to take away anything that Tony might say, but when they told me that, what I immediately thought was I needed to take responsibility for my own health.
Right.
Yes, yes.
And that's why we're here today. I am not diabetes type 2, I'm happy to say. And it's because I've listened to and learned from people like Mr. Kelly.
Right, right.
So,
very good point. We need to take responsibility for our own health. Nobody knows their body better than they do. You will know whether your body is working, functioning well as opposed to 6 months ago or 2 weeks ago.
Absolutely.
And men in particular, I might digress slightly, but men in particular, I have more than one. 1 in every 4 Black men will get prostate cancer. And I'm talking about diabetes, but I make the opportunity to also bring that into the equation, where prostate cancer is one of the easiest cancers to cure if caught early. And men suffer in silence. Men no bother to go get their checkups. They drive a Lamborghini or a Volvo or a Porsche or so on. They go and get it MOT tested yearly. When it comes to their body, which is their temple, given to them by Jehovah Allah, then I better go get that checked. And I said to them in the events that I do, listen, that car you're driving is a piece of junk. And some people challenge me, Tony, you can't call me Porsche and my Volvo a piece of junk. I say, it is. If you leave it out there, it will rot. You need to, just like how you go get it MOT tested yearly, you are to do the same with your body. And I'm on this drive to get men to get themselves, because the prostate, as I said, it might not be prostate cancer you might have an enlarged prostate, or you might have an infection called prostatitis. We have to get our men folk, our the girlfriends, the partners, the wives, or so on, must take their father, their nephew, their uncle, their husband, kicking and screaming if needs be, to go and get checked once a year. As was said earlier, on the National Health Service, it is free. And do not let any medical person try and put you off and say, oh, you look as right as rain. Nothing's wrong with you. We don't need to send off your bloods, or we don't need to send you for an X-ray. Ask the CCT scan. I said to them in my events, ask the doctor if he or she has X-ray vision to know what's going on inside of you. That's my starting point.
Absolutely.
I tell it as it is. I keep it very real. I'm Marmite, I have to say, Stafford and Michael. Some people love me to bits, and another set of people can't stand me at all. I think myself, remember, I'm not Jesus though. When Jesus was on earth, some people loved him, and some people hated him, and some people even crucified him. You know, I'm not Jesus, but I'm there to get the message across to Black people that they need to wake up and smell the coffee or the roses, but they need to be in charge of their health. And the same way they take care of their car, it's the same way they must take care of their body. That's my starting point.
Absolutely. We need to take responsibility. And what I say here in the UK, free healthcare is like Bob Marley saying, in the abundance of water, the food is thirsty. So we need to avail the services that we have here, because there's some places where Black people are, some places on the continent and on those islands where people would welcome an opportunity of having the free healthcare that
That's really good. Yeah.
we're just turning our nose up and actually taking for granted. But
Okay,
Tony, please,
before you say go any further, you have a question, but I'm gonna put it another way. Wanty, can't get it, and getty, no want it. And I say that all the time, and people say, I thought you say you're born in England. How come you have all these Jamaican sayings? I say, well, that's the issue. The NHS is there at the point of it's free. And most Black men, I go to the Goodwara, I go to where they're playing they're playing the domino, I go to the rum bar, the barber shop, the hairdressers. That's the places that I go, where they're watching cricket, where they're watching football. I have all of these T-shirts, about 12 of them, different colors, and the hoodies as well. And I go and engage with people. So before you go into your next question, over here in Britain, they like to use the word hard to reach communities. I hate it with a passion. When I hear these academics and professors go into these big conferences and talk about hard to reach communities, when they finish their presentation, mine is the first hand to go up. And I say, excuse me, could you explain to me, you've just done your talk, your presentation, your lecture. Who are these hard to reach communities? Listen, they're bright like stadium bulb. They quickly say the Africans, the Caribbeans, the South Asians. I say, I take great, and white working class. I say, I take great offense to that. Are these people on Mars, Jupiter, in the rainforest, on another celestial body, in the Himalayas, in the jungle? No, they are not. We all make up the community. And if Muhammad can't go to the mountain must go to Muhammad. And if I can do, as you said at the beginning, 140 community events per year on average, knocking on gurdwaras, mosques, churches, office blocks, residential homes, all in a voluntary capacity, I'm saying to these academics and professors out there, you need to get from out of your ivory tower, you need to get from behind your laptop, you need to go and engage with the communities. So don't give me that nonsense about hard to reach.
It's interesting that you talk about hard to reach, because as a great community campaigner once said, we're hard to reach, apart from if you're the police, they will find us.
Exactly, I agree.
Them.
I agree. So say historically excluded, just so I can tell what the people should, historically excluded, historically neglected, historically ignored, marginalized, and underserved.
Thank you. But those who are responsible for historically ignoring people are not going to give us that title. I've always said to people, particularly in the NHS, where I feel that this term is used more than any public sector, ultimately what they're doing is victim blaming. Blaming the victims, and we are not hard to reach, but we're easy to dismiss. And sometimes we allow and enable them to dismiss us easily because we don't turn up, because we don't behave as if we're empowered, because we don't demand our rights from the healthcare sector, maybe in the same way that we might demand or expect rights from the criminal justice system. What I really wanted to ask you, so thanks for that, Tony. What I really wanted to ask you about is, you said that I think it was your wife who spotted the symptoms that you were suffering from some of the 40s. So then what happened? Because that's the part.
Right, so I came back to England in 1979 after teaching in these high schools in Kingston, Michael Teachers College graduate. Came back here, going about my merry life, and then suddenly, 19 years ago, she noticed the 40s, especially me getting up during the night 4 or 5 times, this is about 19 years ago, to go and use the loo, as we would say in Britain, or the bathroom or the toilet. She kept saying, something's wrong with you, something's wrong with you. But as like most men, I was in denial, like the ostrich, the largest bird on the planet, burying its head in the sand. I wouldn't own up to the fact that something was definitely wrong with me. But eventually, and she's heard me speak lots of times, she said, she kept nagging me, and that's exactly what she was doing. I went one morning early before having any breakfast with a vial of urine to the doctor, and the doctor put the dipstick in the urine, held it up to the light 19 years ago, and she said, it's changed color, and it's changed to suggest you have blood glucose or blood sugar, those were her exact words, in your urine, and there shouldn't be any. But what I'm going to do is send off to the lab a sample of your blood from your actual body, and it will determine whether you have type 2 diabetes. And it came back as an early Christmas present, Michael and Stafford, that I have this medical condition, type 2. I then had the choice. Do I continue to eat 6-7 tablespoons of rice and peas, which me love, or do I make the behavioral or lifestyle changes to keep the complications at bay, which I saw firsthand when I was growing up, and I made the changes.
I'm sure before you came to that decision, that the doctor that sent you for the blood test would have offered you some form of medication, right?
No, they didn't actually. No, funny enough, I'm a very assertive person, so they didn't go down the route of metformin or any other medication straight away. They gave me the result, and I thought, here we go. In my case, it runs in my family. It's hereditary. So it's in the DNA, the genes, the genetics, the metabolism. So I thought, I saw suffering, literally saw suffering of the older relatives and the middle-aged relatives in Whitehall, St. Thomas. And I thought, no, I'm not going to go there. I'm going to discipline myself. So I made the conscious effort the moment I was diagnosed to watch my eating, healthy, balanced, well-balanced diet, and do a lot more physical activity. Before Usain Bolt was born, I used to run in the National Stadium in Jamaica for high school and youth club and micro teachers college. But suddenly, in cold Britain, I stopped all of that running and I started to pile on the pounds. And then all of a sudden, when the diabetes set in, the tired, the toilet, the thirsty, the thin, I started to lose the weight. And of course, my wife said, no, something's not right here. You need to go check up. And when I went to the doctor, I put my hand up and said, the doctor said to me, the records show you had not been down to this surgery in 8 years up to that point. So I was the typical man who know the doctors. Michael and Stafford, at the first sign of an ache, a twitch, or a pain, from a gender perspective, a woman will go see their GP, beeline to the GP, ache, pain, or what have you. Men, instead, gone to the rumba, gone play cricket, gone play football, gone watch domino, or gone play football, and are not in touch with their emotions and feelings. And this is where I'm on to men a lot. I go to a lot of men's groups in Birmingham. I don't know if we have them in London, but I go to a lot of men's groups. And I said to these men groups when they start off, do not at the start invite your women folk to come. Give men the space and time. All the men come together to talk amongst themselves. And this one we say, oh, we never know that affected you. That also, and give them that space and time to talk about their issues, their health issues. And once they start talk, it's just like me, then I stop, you know.
Imagine, though, that there is a kind of script that you use to, I suppose, promote that conversation and to invite people to have that dialogue. Just talk us through that.
Now, in terms of the men's groups that are in Birmingham, I didn't set up any of them. The people realize, especially after COVID-19, because people are saying it's all these comorbidities which cause Black people to be in intensive care unit more and to suffer from COVID more and to die more. The health inequalities and disparities was a major factor where Black people, in terms of their immune system, was compromised and so on. So the dialogue which you're having now, men decided in various churches. I go to about 3 different men's groups, and I can give you the people who started them. There are mountain men who are turning up on a monthly basis at these men's groups. And that's where all of these groups invite me. And some have invited me 2-3 times. I said, Tony, we get you. We understand you. We just love how you keep it simple and plain. And some keep on asking me if I'm medically qualified. And I said, no. But these men's groups meet, and they have various speakers come and speak about prostate cancer, about diabetes, about mental health, because that's a major issue within our community. We tend to just bottle it all up and not wanting to talk. And it's not the macho manly thing to be able to cry. Any man listening to this program, let the tears out, please. Don't bottle it up and stuff. And then the next thing you hear about the high suicidal rate and so on. So these groups are meeting all over the West Midlands, and I go to them. Once I go to them, some of them then invite me to their churches or wherever else. But in the groups themselves, it's good to hear them for the first time ever talking. And they say, well, I couldn't really discuss that with my partner or my missus or my wife, but I'm comfortable doing it here with a group of men. I'm realizing they too have some of the same health issues that and I say, oh my God, I never knew that. I wish this group was up and running for the last 10, 12, 13 years. And it's empowering the men and enabling them to say, you know what? Go get your PSA check done. Go get your cholesterol done. Go get your blood pressure done. Go get your diabetes. And there are some doctors, not all, who when they go, they say, oh, you look as right as rain and you're not in the at-risk group. Once you reach age 40 to 45, you are, as a Black man, at risk of getting prostate cancer. So when some of these doctors are turning, because people tell me stories about being turned away, saying, no, the doctor said, it's no point sending it. I get very angry when I hear that. I really get annoyed and angry that doctors are out there doing that to some Black people.
As well as the prostate that we know that Black men get in disproportionate numbers, we're also disproportionately affected by diabetes type 2 in particular. And there is a school of thought that says that the NHS may say that we're more likely to get that condition because of our ethnicity. But there's a school of thought that says that it's our ethnicity and the way we're treated on a daily basis, what we have to face and go through in racist environments that then that causes stress, that then affects cortisol, that then, impacts us and makes us more likely to catch diabetes type 2.
Yes.
What do you say?
Let me talk about the stress. If you're constantly under stress, and that is one of the PowerPoint slides I show, stress day in, day out, stress from racism, from sexism, stress from in a work environment, but over a long period of time, it causes the blood glucose levels, the sugar levels to rise and can cause, and people find that hard to believe. I say, yes, I'm not just saying this for say's sake. It's been given to me by the National Health Service and by Diabetes UK. We have to either pray, meditate, do yoga, do Zumba, take deep breaths. You have to, as Black people, try to alleviate and bring down the stress levels that we experience. But apart from that, there's issues about our diet and physical activity, which we need to talk about in this video in terms of what do I do? Not everybody, some people might have mobility issues and disability issues. We need to get off of our proverbial, by that I mean our bottom or our backside. We cannot be eating 8, 9, 10 lovely Julie or East Indian mangoes and sitting down and not doing any physical activity. I never, Michael and Stafford, use the word exercise in any of my presentations. If you hear me use that when you come to a presentation of mine, get up and come and slap me. Physical activity is gardening, mowing the lawn, cleaning the windows, walking around the block, climbing the stairs. You don't, if you say exercise, it conjures up images. You want the person to go to the gym. Absolutely. That's not what I'm on about. So I have to do things. It's called pro-social modeling. I lead by example. So for argument's sake, if you were to come to Birmingham and if you saw me in a lift, slap me. I don't do lifts, elevators, or escalators. My feet were made for walking, and I walk. If I have to climb up 30 stories, people say, Tony, you're crazy. You're not Superman. You can't do that. Trust me. The lift stop at the 2nd, the 3rd, the 5th, the 9th, the 12th, the 20th. By the time I reach the 30th, I've already come off, having walked up the stairs. I see people going to the supermarket, Michael and Stafford, the travelator. Ask yourself, do you have a travelator at your yard or at your home? No. So what the dickens you going into the supermarket? You're only going 30 feet and you plunk yourself on the travelator when you could have walked up the steps and done some physical activity. Another one is, why do we tend to park our car right at the entrance of the supermarket? The height of laziness. Park it way down yonder and walk up. You would have done some physical activity. Then another classic one for me, Michael and Stafford, is this. When I came back to Britain in 1979, we had BBC One, BBC Two, and ITV, 3 channels. In Jamaica, they only had JBC. Now you go worldwide, they have this thing called the remote control. Beep, 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 beep. You know what I'm asking viewers to do and listeners? Hide the remote control. I am deadly serious. Put dead batteries in it or take out the batteries. And if you, within an hour, while sitting there watching the television, have to get up and change the channel or turn it off or put the volume on, do that. You have done some movement. Then some people try and catch me out telling me, Tony, the smart flat screen televisions don't have buttons on the sides or the bottom or the back. I have been into every electrical store in the city center and they have told me, don't make these people fool you. I'm lazy, them lazy. Every teeth, what if you lose the remote control? How are you going to do it? Every single teeth. And some people say to me, you know, we never noticed. I said, that's because you're lazy. If you start go around and look at it, you'd have seen them at the top or the bottom or at the side. Absolutely. Then another thing while I'm on this remote control, some of you have it, some of the viewers and listeners have it. Alexa, Siri, turn off the light. Alexa, Siri, open the curtains. Alexa, Siri, turn on the radio. Get off your proverbial and go turn on the light, open the curtains. This is movement you are doing, people. For the food you've ate, you've allowed it. You're burning up the calories. And that's part of the issue here. Movement, people, movement. It don't have to be going to the gym. Yes, I do go to the gym. I do Pilates, yoga, Zumba, acrobics, swimming. I've learned to swim in the last 2 years. When I was growing up in Jamaica, my grandmother said, your mother sent you here for me to look after you. I am not sending you to the lovely beach or the river or to go catch crab. You will drown. So I've never learned to swim. During lockdown, I saw an article. We all know who Linford Christie is. At his stage of life, Linford Christie learned to swim. And I thought, if it's good enough for Linford Christie, it's good enough for Tony Kelly. Now, so I went to the beginners group. I did my master's degree at Birmingham University. I went to the beginners group. Afraid of water like what? They coaxed me and said, come on, come on. They moved me to the intermediate. And September, before I left to come here October, I'm now in the advanced swimming class. So I'm not buying this argument of black people, we sink, with metabolism, we will sink. And as for the women listening, Tony, they tell me all the time in the events, oh, the chlorine. Forget the chlorine. Okay. You might save your child or your nephew or your niece's life one day or somebody's life. Go learn to swim.
Well, that's been brilliant, Tony, because what you're telling us and showing us is how modern living can also impact, modern lifestyle can also impact on our health, right?
Exactly.
But you also started off talking about those people who were dying of the same condition 60, 70, and 80 years ago. So the condition's absolutely real. The condition is real. And what we need to talk to people about now is how to manage it if you actually have it.
Now, you mentioned in the 60s, 70s, even now, because when I was growing up, my grandmother would say, get yourself ready. You're a bright little boy. You're going to such and such a funeral. That's at me only 9, 10, 11. And I said, I don't know then. And she would say to me, well, I am not going. You're going to represent the family. So I'm a funeral person. I might not know your sister, and your sister's passed, God forbid. But because I know you, Stafford, as a mark of respect, it's a black thing to go to. So I go to a lot of black funerals within the West Midlands. And I very nosily asked, what killed so-and-so in the, in the 70s, since I've been here, in their 40s, 50s, 60s. Apart from cancer, all I keep hearing is about type 2 diabetes. And I shake my head and I think, really? In this day and age, people are succumbing to this medical condition. Why are they not doing the things in order to keep, and we're on it now, managing and controlling it? So let's talk about food. Start off with a joke. My father used to say to me, he's no longer with us, Food is the staff of life, but rum is life itself. Him used to like him liquor. But we have to eat food. And you decide, people listening will decide, do you eat to live or do you live to eat? I make them decide. I'm not going to tell them which of the answers is. They must know. But all carbohydrates you eat, and I'll mention some of them: rice, bread, yam, patty, all carbohydrates we eat break down into your body into blood glucose or blood sugar. Not a lot of people know that, Michael and Stafford. I'm telling you, because I see people who are diabetic and they say, oh, Tony, I'm going to give up the donut, I'm going to give up the Christmas cake, I'm going to give up the Easter bun, I'm going to give up the condensed milk and the syrup. And I say, excuse me, what about yam, rice, bread, cocoa, dasheen, and these sorts of things? I'm not saying you must give them up, but it's about portion sizes, because they will break down into your body into glucose or sugar. So it's moderate. You need carbohydrates for energy, starchy food for energy. But alongside that, on your dinner plate, you must have your vegetables. And I'll give you a joke. When I was growing up as a child, I couldn't stand vegetables. And my grandmother would sit me at the table and she'd have her strap or her slippers. And she would say, you need to eat the lettuce, and you need to eat the tomatoes, and you need to eat the kale, and the callaloo, and the susumba. Susumba is gully beans, bitter like what? And I would say to her, because I was very cheeky, I would say to her, Granny, all those foods that you have on my plate, that is for guinea pigs and rabbits, human beings. And she would slap me and say, don't be cheeky, eat it. And I could not leave the dinner table back then, 8, 9, 10, until I had my lettuce and my watercress and my kale and my susumba and so on. So it's become part and part. These youngsters nowadays, they won't touch those sort of things with a barge spoon. They want the chips and the McNuggets and the all the fast food and so on.
And the fried
They
chicken.
cannot. No, they gotta stop. Over here, and I go to Dominica the same. I pass a long line, about half a mile. I say, what are those people? I won't name the establishment. What are those people? Oh, they're waiting to get their food from a particular outlet, chicken outlet. You know which chicken outlet I'm talking. And I said to them, on a Saturday, I grew up in the country, and even to this day back in Birmingham, Saturday is religiously Saturday soup. Even to this day in our household, Saturday soup. And I remember growing up, you talk about what do we do now? When I was growing up, we were not allowed in the kitchen as boys. The boys, and at school, we did woodwork and auto mechanics and plumbing. The girls did baking and sewing and dressmaking and home economics. We need to stop that and change that divide. The genders must do both things. So when the man leaves the home, okay, he needs to be able to sew the button on his shirt, to do his ironing, and to cook. So I couldn't cook. I couldn't cook to save my life. Couldn't even boil an egg. So 2008, my daughter gave me the best Christmas present I've ever had. 15 Caribbean cookery lessons all the way over in Sutton Coldfield. And I used to have to go every Wednesday and put on my pinafore, my apron, and learn to cook Caribbean food. I leave it with you to decide in our household now, with my son-in-law, who you think is one of the best chefs, the best cooks in the Kelly household. And I remind you both, when you look at the TV programs, the cookery programs, what gender, both of your answer, what gender are most of the chefs?
Women.
Men or women?
Women. But the thing is this,
Most of them are men.
I hear everything you're talking about there in terms of how it's managed. But how about the unmanageable? We hear a lot about, you touched on it earlier about cortisol. You talked slightly or briefly about the physiological aspects of it. What or how much store do you actually put by what we've been told on a almost cyclical basis, and that is you have no control over it because you as a community have a propensity and a high propensity and a high proportion of you are going to actually live with diabetes.
Yes, 2 to 4 times, 2 to 4
Okay.
times more likely.
So let's talk about the unmanageable then. What's your thoughts on that?
Is it?
The word unmanageable doesn't exist in my vocabulary. And I would
Okay.
be saying to other people, forget that word. Can't cook, won't cook. Can't, the word can't is in the dictionary of fools. It's up to you to motivate yourself. For the likes of me and both of you, to empower, enable people to make the lifestyle changes. Habits are easy to make, but hard to break. So here's one classic example. You're going home, you're a working person. You see, the weekend, when you have time on your hands, prepare 3 or 4 dishes, meals. You know how much sugar you're putting in it, how much salt, how much saturate, how much oil. Then, after you prepare these meals of your own accord, you put them in the fridge or freezer. So on the way home from work, you're tired like what? And you have the smell of the fish and chips wafting through the air, or the Chinese takeaway, or what have you. You know, no, me not stop you say, you know. I know I have something that I've prepared, and I will be able to warm it up, heat it up, and have it. So we need to look at, and then how we're getting our kids learning, teaching the kids to cook healthily. And also, so I don't buy this business of can't cook, won't cook. If Tony Kelly has learned to cook and swim, anybody can learn to cook and swim. That's my starting point. So we need to motivate, we need to enable, we need to empower. And then, especially during mango season here in the Caribbean, wash your pot, turn it down, it's mango time. You can't sit down, they have 8, 9, 10 Julie mangoes at a time. Trust me. It is natural sugar or fructose. You will pile on the pounds. After you've had the mangoes, whatever quantity you've had, you've got to burn up the calories. You have to find things. Form a walking club in your district, and all 4 you find hills, and Jamaica have whole heap of hills and gradients and steep places. Britain has as well. You find, whether you want to do yoga, whether you want to Zumba, whether you want to find something to get you up and about, more than leading what we call the sedentary couch potato lifestyle, 10, 11 hours sitting down doing nothing. You will not lose weight that way. Absolutely. God helps those who help themselves. A woman once said to me, Mr. Kelly, Tony, elderly person, me not have diabetes, but if me get it, mother ask God to cure it. Me said that is one miracle me that tell God send about a cure, because prevention is better than cure. But you tell me about yo go get it.
And that's why we say, and that's why we say, eat naturally and keep active.
Right? Keep active. And keep active.
But in our program, in our podcast, we have, obviously we're gonna have the Russes here. We've got some Russes in the studio today who are going to talk about organic food that they grow. We've got the Rasta farmer to talk about the organic produce that he does. So obviously, we would say to people that organic is best, right?
Well, let me talk about that briefly.
And then we want to talk about some herbs that they also might use that might also help their system.
All right, let me start with milk. A few years ago, I had the most almighty pain down one side. And I said to my wife, my appendix has burst. She's a bright woman. She was a primary school teacher for 25 years. She asked me which side is hurting me. And I told her whichever side it was. And she said to me, although I was in pain, don't be so silly. Your appendix is not on that side. I said, how am I supposed to know that? I'm in pain here. Even to this day, I don't know which side the appendix is on. I was taken to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, and I managed to discharge what were crystals that were formed in the kidney. And this is, I want your listeners to hear this loud and clear. On discharge, the doctor said to me, tell me something about your diet. And I proudly said to him, I love cow's milk. The more cream on the top of the cow's milk, you know, the gold top milk, the better. And he said, listen to me, young man, because this was a few years ago. He said, I want you not to drink cow's milk, and get that message across to your Black community. Milk, cow's milk, is for the formation of teeth and bones in babies and children. I said, really? He said, you're supposed to drink plant-based milk. Here they are: coconut milk, almond milk, rice milk, oat milk, and cashew milk. Michael and Stafford, some of them taste bad like what, but they become an acquired taste eventually, and you get used to it. Those are the milks. They're all plant-based that you should go for. And it's been pointed out to me as well, the soya plant, and the herbalist you're going to interview later might agree with me on this. The soya plant attracts a lot of pests. They spray the ordinary soya plant with pesticides, which end up in the food chain and are carcinogenic and cancerous. So it's organic soya milk you should be drinking, not the mass-produced soya milk, because in that there will be pesticides and carcinogenic and so on. So yes, so that, and eat healthily as much as you can. Some people say to me, Tony, you keep on talking about vegetables, but vegetables is expensive in Britain. And I asked them when they asked me that in my events, where do you shop? Listen to the places where they shop. Sainsbury's, Waitrose, Marks and Spencer's. I'm saying you're paying for the ambience, you're paying for the car park, you're paying for the manager, the deputy manager, you're paying for the lovely music, you're paying for the rapping. Tony Kelly goes down to the Bull Ring. On a Saturday, the tomatoes, the lettuce, the ripe bananas, because the market is not opened on a Sunday, you get a bowl of tomatoes for 50p. You get the lettuce. They're literally giving it away because they know Sunday, the market is not open. And by Monday, and we take it home, and of course, and my wife will say to me, well, why you buy so much tomatoes or so much carrots or so much kale or so much this or that? And I say, well, they were basically giving it away. So we do whatever, and if necessary, parboil them or put them in the fridge or so on. You don't have to shop at Waitrose. And people say, but Tony, you're posh man, and they say you shop. We say, I will go into Waitrose and Marks and Spencer's occasionally for a nice treat. But that's not my regular hunt for shopping. No. And you're getting the food. So this whole issue of vegetables and getting the youngsters, the more red vegetables you eat, the better. Red onion, red cabbage, red peppers, bell peppers, and cress, and lettuce, and all the vegetables under the sun. I'm urging people to eat more of them. And alongside the vegetables, drink more water. Water keeps us hydrated. And a lot of elderly folk do not drink enough water, and they become dehydrated. Now, let me give you something about water. Some people like to go for the sparkling water, fizzy water, carbonated water. Forget it. Forget it. When rain falls from the sky, is it sparkling, carbonated, or fizzy? So what the dickens we're going into the supermarket, or when we go, we're drinking sparkling, aerated, or carbonated water. Even those waters, they put chemicals in them, you will put on weight. Drink the water will fall from God's sky. The source is also plain water, because they flush out the poisons. That's the aim of the kidney, to flush out the poisons and the toxins from your system. So your urine is a light yellow color, and it does not have a stench. I am asking people. So some people say, Tony, we can't drink up to 2 liters of water per day. I say, okay, there is water in melons, papaya, cantaloupe, oranges, grapefruit. And I'm not talking the juices where you see in the supermarket. I'm not talking those, because those are packed with sugar. I am talking the natural fruit. We get the fruits of England. The grapes, the white grapes, the red grapes, the oranges, the grapefruits, the satsumas, the naseberries, the what have you. Have those as part of your consumption, because there's liquid in them as well.
Absolutely. And now, Tony, I mean, you've been an amazing guest. We haven't
Tremendous.
We haven't had to ask you lots of questions. You know, you've hit all the themes that we really wanted to cover.
Could listen to you all day.
Absolutely. But Tony himself is kind of on holiday and wants to go and have a well-earned break. But in closing, what I'd like you to do is just, so you got diagnosed with diabetes in what year?
20 years this Christmas as an early Christmas present. But I've been fortunate enough to never have taken medication. Let me tell you something before you ask me your final question. We have the NHS, And at the 70th anniversary of the NHS, which was formed the same year as the Windrush, so not the 75th, the 70th, they wanted somebody to come to Queen Elizabeth Hospital live on BBC television to talk about how they manage the diabetes. And everybody said, we can think of only one person, Tony Kelly. So there I was live on television at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. The first question the woman asked me, she said, so Mr. Kelly, so Tony, you're a diabetes sufferer. Me stop her straight there. So I say, excuse me? I am living with this medical condition. I am managing and controlling it. Please never, ever call me a diabetes sufferer. There's a big difference.
Yeah.
I said, there are some people out there who have kidney issues and have to go on dialysis. Some people who have had strokes, some people who have had heart attacks, some people have had their limbs chopped off because they have had sores and ulcers and not taking care of their feet. Tony Kelly is not a diabetes sufferer. By the time I got home, my wife said, you know, about 20 people rang the house phone and said, what a good, brilliant answer you gave the woman. She was very apologetic. I said, look at me. I'm as fit as a fiddle. I do Pilates, Zumba, aerobics, yoga, swimming. I've never had a suffering from diabetes. How dare you come call me a diabetes sufferer? So she was so apologetic. Not everybody will be as good as I am. And there are some people, believe it or not. Let me just explain the difference between type 1 and type 2. Type 1, only 8% of people have type 1. And type 1 is when the pancreas, that 8-inch gland, which is situated right behind the belly button or navel string and produces the hormone insulin, it stops working altogether. That's type 1. Nothing to do with age, ethnicity, gender, size. Type 2 is either heredity, as in my case, or there's too much weight around the midriff and it is preventing the pancreas from making the hormone naturally, or it's making some insulin, it's not doing its job properly. And some skinny people, or in the Caribbean where they say mager people, can also develop type 2 because the fat, although they're skinny, the fat can be deposited. So those people who are overweight and obese or morbidly obese or mildly obese, they need to get rid of some of the fat that's around the tummy area here to enable the pancreas. Sir Frederick Banting, 102 years ago, discovered the hormone insulin. He noticed a mager dog or meager dog outside in Canada. And what he did, he made up this concoction, which is why on the 14th of November every year, World Diabetes Day, is the birthday of Sir Frederick Banting, who discovered the synthetic, artificial, man-made hormone insulin. So everybody with type 1 have to inject.
Right.
Type 2, some people do inject, but some people take metformin, and some, like me, manage it with a disciplined approach. And a few people manage to reverse the diabetes. It doesn't mean they've been cured. Please mark that carefully, listeners. They reverse it by eating very healthily and doing physical activity. But if they don't eat healthily, it will come back. And on that note, thank you for having me.
Tony, you've been the most amazing guest we've had.
Incredible guest.
You've helped to set up some of our other guests because we're going to talk about the benefits of organic food and healthy eating. I think
Right.
we're going to talk about the benefit of organic food and healthy eating and
herbs.
herbs and herbalists. I think you've set us up incredibly well.
Tremendously well.
All right. May I leave my email address? Tony Kelly Diabetes @hotmail.com. And everybody has my card, so I don't mind giving out my card. We have a second landline at home, 0121 686 0440. When I come back, I probably have a lot of calls on the 6th of December when I arrive back in Britain. But call me. Remember, I'm not a dietitian, I'm not a diabetic nurse, I'm not a doctor, but I'm somebody, for those who didn't hear the very first part of it, with my lived experience and willing to share it. Sharing is caring. And that's why you both are here, Stafford and Michael, a dialogue of equality. Thanks for having me.
Dialogue of equals.
Thank you, Tony Kelly.
Amazing.
Thank you.
All the best.
Take care.
And you.
And there you have it. Tony Kelly.
I learned so much.
A diabetes ambassador and champ. Someone who takes responsibility for their own healthcare. I mean, I'm not for words, right?
I love the way in which he was saying, look, it's not just about you getting help, it's about you helping yourself.
Absolutely.
You are the captain of this ship. You need to be the one that's actually guiding that. I loved it. Absolutely
And
loved
he
it.
took responsibility, went out and learnt, and then put the learning into action in his
So many examples he had there about how you can help yourself. There is something out there for everyone. You can actually pick from the list which he gave you. He's giving you the blueprint. Go out and do it.
Absolutely. And not just a diabetes and ambassador, but a champion in helping us understand that we don't necessarily need to be reliant or over-reliant on pharmaceuticals to provide us with our healthcare needs. Thank you so much, Tim.
All right. Take care, everybody. I'm off to the beach now. You can't come with me.
Lucky you. We're gonna go and have some fruit.
Okay, all right.
Take care.
Bye, Stafford. Bye, Michael. All right.
Take a step, go get checked. Want the best for you, no less. Stubborn head, make it make sense. NHS before it goes left. Me and my unks had a dialogue of equals. We're tired of all our people dying before they seem to. Silence don't make you peaceful. So many open wounds, don't even know how we'll heal all. But this is food for thought of a meal. It might be a free course. You know the usual 9 nights and funerals, high and by at the graveside like time is recuperable. Ignore the treatable symptoms, these will cause a domino effect. You won't make it home to the loody board. Take a step, go get checked. Want the best for you, no less. Stubborn head, make it make sense. NHS before it goes left.
Any information provided on our podcast series is for educational purposes only and does not substitute for professional medical advice. We advise listeners to consult a medical professional or healthcare provider if they seek medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. We value different opinions and experiences in our program, and any information shared by our guests should be seen as their personal opinion. We have guests who are medical practitioners, but we do not have a medical doctor on our production team. We've added extra information from reputable sources on our website if you want to inform yourself further. We strongly advocate for everyone taking responsibility to inform ourselves about our health. We cannot be liable for risk or issues associated with using information discussed during this program.